The bank statement wasn't the thing that broke something between us. It was the way my daughter-in-law smiled when she said it. Patient, like she was explaining something obvious to someone who just didn't quite understand yet. "We figured it out," she said. "You're not doing anything anyway." I set my coffee cup down very carefully. I have a system for moments like that. I've had it for years. You don't react. You let the words settle into the room like dust. You wait and see what they coat. My name is not important right now. What matters is that I am 63 years old. I have worked at the same accounting firm for 21 years. I own my home outright. I have a 401(n) that I have fed like a garden every single month since I was 34. I am not rich. But I am not nothing either. And I have spent my whole adult life making sure no one could ever look at me and say that I was a burden to anyone. So when my son called me on a Tuesday evening in March and said they needed to talk, not over the phone, in person, could I come for dinner Saturday? I already felt something shift in my chest. My son has my eyes. He has my stubbornness. He does not call midweek to invite me to dinner unless something is coming. His wife, I'll call her my daughter-in-law because that is what she is, had set the table nicely. Cloth napkins, the good pasta. My grandson was already in his high chair when I arrived, banging a plastic spoon against the tray with the absolute conviction of someone who knows exactly what he wants. He's 18 months old. He is the best thing that has happened to this family in a long time, and I would do almost anything for him. Almost. Dinner was good. We talked about the weather, about my grandson's new words. He'd started saying more and dog, and something that might have been outside, and about the neighborhood, how they were thinking of putting a fence in the backyard. My son kept refilling my water glass. His wife kept smiling at him in that sideways way couples have when they've rehearsed something together. I ate my pasta and I waited. Dessert was store-bought tiramisu, which my daughter-in-law put on the table, still in its plastic container, because she'd forgotten to move it to a real dish. That was when I knew they were nervous. She is particular about presentation. Forgetting the dish meant her mind was somewhere else entirely. My son cleared his throat. "Mom," he said, "we want to talk to you about something." I folded my hands in my lap. "Okay." He looked at his wife. She gave him the nod. "So, childcare has gotten really expensive," he started. "Like really expensive. We've been looking at our options and, okay, I'm just going to say it. The daycare near us, the one we liked, it's $2,200 a month." I nodded. I knew the number. I'd looked it up the week before when I felt the dinner invitation forming into something. And with the mortgage and the car payments and everything else. He spread his hands on the table. "We're stretched. We're not going to lie to you. We're really stretched." "How stretched?" I asked. His wife answered before he could. "We bring in about $11,000 a month combined, after taxes." She said it the way people say numbers they want you to hear as large. "But the mortgage is $3,400. Both car payments are together almost $900. Utilities, groceries, insurance, it adds up fast. And now with daycare on top of that." "What do you spend on the country club?" I asked. The room went quiet in a specific way. That's a networking thing," my son said. "For work. How much?" He looked at the tiramisu. $450 a month. I nodded again. I did not say anything. My daughter-in-law leaned forward a little. She has a way of leaning that means she's coming to the part she's been practicing. "We were thinking," she said, "that maybe this would be a good time for you to think about transitioning. You're 63. You could retire early, and then you could watch the baby during the day, and it would be free," I said. "We didn't say that. You said $2,200 a month is too expensive. What were you planning to pay me?" My son jumped in. "Mom, it wouldn't be a job, it would be babysitting your child 5 days a week is a job," I said. "It's a full-time job. It's the job I raised you so I would not have to do again." That came out harder than I meant it to, but I let it stand. My daughter-in-law sat back. Her expression did something complicated that I recognized as someone recalibrating. "We just thought, you love him so much, and it would be good for him to be with family." "I do love him," I said. "That's not the question." "Then what is?" I reached down and picked up my purse from beside the chair. I had brought a folder with me. I set it on the table next to the plastic tiramisu container, and I opened it. The question, I said, is whether any of you have looked at what retiring early actually means. I want to explain something about who I am before I tell you what was in that folder. I grew up in a house where money was not talked about. My mother had a coffee can in the kitchen cupboard where she kept cash, and she never told anyone how much was in it or what it was for. When my father lost his job in 1987, we ate a lot of rice and beans for 8 months, and nobody explained to us children why. Money was private. Money was almost shameful. You didn't ask and you didn't tell. When I got my first real job at 22, I made a lot of mistakes. Credit card debt, a car I couldn't afford, a first apartment that was too expensive because I wanted to feel like I'd made it. It took me until I was 30 to untangle all of that, and when I did, I made myself a promise that I have kept for 33 years. I would understand every number in my life, every single one. I would never be surprised by my own finances again. So when my son said they were stretched on a combined income of $132,000 a year, I had already been sitting with the math for a week. I knew what I would find if I dug, and I had dug. The folder had 4 pages in it. I turned the first one toward them. It was a simple breakdown, their approximate monthly income versus their approximate monthly fixed expenses, based on what I knew and what they'd just told me. $11,000 a month, I said. Mortgage, car payments, your club membership, utilities. I estimated those. I might be off a little. That gets us to about $6,700 before you've bought a single bag of groceries. My daughter-in-law was looking at the paper like it had said something rude to her. Groceries, household supplies, gas. Let's say $800, and that's conservative for a family of 3. That's $7,500. You have roughly $3,500 left. Daycare is $2,200. That leaves $1,300, which is why. My son started. I'm not done, I said. He stopped. I pulled your Venmo. I turned the second page toward them. Not all of it, just what's public. You sent your wife's sister money twice last month. Meal delivery apps. There are a few other things on here I don't recognize, but I didn't dig too deep. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, but what I see is that $1,300 doesn't stay $1,300. The silence at that table was a particular kind of silence. The kind where no one is sure yet whether to be embarrassed or angry. My daughter-in-law found angry first. You went through our Venmo? The public feed, I said. Same way anyone could. That's an invasion of the subscription box. My son said quietly. We both looked at him. His jaw was tight. He was looking at his wife, not at me. The subscription boxes. You said we canceled this. She opened her mouth, closed it. Did we cancel them? I was going to. How much? He asked. Collectively about $300, she said. Almost a whisper. My son put his face in his hands for a moment. He's 34 years old, but in that moment he looked about 19. I wanted to reach over and put my hand on his arm. I didn't. I turned the third page toward them. This is what early retirement would cost me, as I said. I'm 63. Full retirement age for my Social Security is 67. If I retire now, I take a permanent reduction, roughly about 30% less per month every month for the rest of my life. My 401n, if I pull from it before 59.5, which I already passed, but my point is, the balance I've built assumes I keep contributing for 4 more years. The projections change considerably. I tapped the numbers. I had run them twice to make sure. If I retire today and watch the baby and don't draw a salary, I lose approximately $340,000 in lifetime income and benefits. That's not a guess. That's math. My daughter-in-law looked up from the paper. We weren't asking you to never go back to work. How old will I be when he starts kindergarten? She blinked. 67, I said. If I retire now to watch him, I'll be 67 when he starts school. That's full retirement age. At that point, would you expect me to go back to work? Would any firm hire a 67-year-old coming off 4 years out of the workforce? No one answered. I built this, I said, and I touched the folder. 30 years of building this. I need 4 more years. I can't give them away. My grandson had fallen asleep in his high chair sometime in the middle of all of this. He does that. One minute he's banging his spoon. The next his head is drooping and he's just gone, fully trusting that the world will hold him up. I looked at him while my son and his wife sat quietly, not looking at each other. I felt then the thing I always feel in moments like this, which is the specific grief of loving someone and seeing clearly at the same time. My son is a good person. He works hard. He makes more money than I did at his age, and he's struggling with it in the exact same way I struggled with less, because the math of living in this country has not gotten kinder. I understood his situation. I just could not make it mine. "Can I ask you something?" I said. My son nodded. "The babysitting. When you came up with this plan, did you consider asking your wife's parents?" Another silence, different texture. "Her parents are farther away," my daughter-in-law said. "Her mother drove 40 minutes to help you move last spring," I said. "I remember because you told me." "That's different. Is her mother retired?" My daughter-in-law looked at the table. "She retired early," my son said. He said it very quietly, "a couple years ago. And she's not available to help?" My daughter-in-law reached up and tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. "She has her own things." "I see," I said. "And I didn't say that. You didn't have to." I was not angry when I said it. I want to be clear about that. I was just very tired and very clear. "You called me because I'm still working, because I look available, because you assumed that me loving him meant I would do it. And that's not how this works." My son looked up at me. His eyes were red around the edges. "Mom, I didn't mean." "I know you didn't mean it," I said. "That's almost worse." I drove home that night with the folder on the passenger seat. The streetlights were doing that thing they do in March, where the cold makes them look ringed, a little blurry. I had the radio off. I thought about my mother's coffee can, about the 8 months of rice and beans, about all the ways financial pressure makes people reach toward whoever seems solid, whoever seems like they might be able to absorb the weight. I had been that person for my son his whole life, and I understood, sitting in that car, that the hardest part of what I'd done at that table was not the numbers. The numbers were easy. The hardest part was saying, clearly and without softening it, "I am not a resource. I am a person. I am 63 years old, and I have 4 years left until I can retire comfortably, and I intend to work them." My son called me the next Thursday. He said they'd had some conversations. He and his wife had gone through their actual budget together. He said, "Actually together, with both of us looking at the real numbers, and I heard in that what I was supposed to hear." He said they had found some things they could cut. The club membership was going on hold. The subscription services were gone. They were looking at a different daycare option, a little farther away, not their first choice but solid, and about $400 a month less. He asked me if I would be willing to take the baby 1 day a week. 1 day, Saturday. He said his wife and he would use that day to batch cook, run errands, have a few hours to themselves, and I could spend real time with my grandson, just the two of us. I said yes before he finished asking. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think about what we were asking." I said, "I know. That's why I brought the folder." He laughed. It was a small laugh, a little wet. "You and your folder. Your grandfather kept a ledger," I said. "Your great-grandmother had a coffee can. We come from a long line of people who made the numbers visible." "Yeah," he said. "I think I need to be more like that." "You will be," I said. "You're figuring it out." 3 months later, my grandson said my name for the first time. Not Grandma, not Nana. Something that was entirely his own word that meant me. A sound I couldn't transcribe if I tried, somewhere between a vowel and a laugh, that he said every time I walked in the door. He would look up from whatever he was doing, his whole face opening like a window, and make that sound. I thought about the $340,000. I thought about the folder on the passenger seat, the ringed streetlights, the tiramisu still in its plastic container. I thought about my mother's coffee can and what it taught me, which is not that money is shameful, but that silence about money is. That the kindest thing you can do for the people you love is to be clear, because clarity is a form of respect, and respect is a form of love, and love that asks you to erase yourself is not love at all. My grandson's made his sound for me. I picked him up. He smelled like crackers and something sweet, and the particular clean of a small person who has just woken from a nap, and he grabbed my collar with both hands the way he does, anchoring himself, and he leaned his head against my shoulder and sighed, the whole body sigh of someone who has arrived exactly where they wanted to be. I had brought the math. He didn't know that. He didn't need to. He just knew I was there.